to reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good. It's good to have you back. At the end of the day yesterday, Agent Higashi was on the witness stand, and Ms. Pearson was in the middle of her direct examination. And so, Agent, I will remind you that you're still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Ms. Pearson, you may resume your direct examination.
Good morning, Agent Higashi.
Good morning.
Yesterday we talked about firearms, magazines, and ammunition and spent casings, and today I'd like to talk about fragments. Did you identify did you examine fragments that were collected in this case?
Yes, I did.
How did you examine them?
Those would be under my comparison microscope, set at about 15 power. Is my normal method to examine the surface of the bullets, and what I'm looking for are the general characteristics of the barrel that fired them, as well as the individual characteristics that might be found within each land impression.
Were you able to determine to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that some of the fragments were fired from the rifle that was collected in this case?
Yes, I was.
And I'm going to hand you a number of exhibits that have previously been admitted. People's Exhibit 433, 440, 448, 104, 554, 562, 584, 587, 590, 109, 113, 122, 123, 291, 311, 600, 602, 610, 611, 998, 639, 644, 326, and 605. Are these items that you examined that were, these have previously been identified and collected in this case, and are these items that you examined?
Yes, as I'm going through these, I do see my initials and seals located. Looks like on all of the envelopes, big and small.
Are these items that you were able to determine to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty were fired from the rifle that was collected in this case?
Yes, these all appear to be the fragments or portions of the bullets that were fired by the Smith & Wesson M&P rifle.
And I'm going to have you, we're going to look at a few of them on the Elmo so that you can explain better how it is that you were able to identify them as to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty having been fired by the rifle. So if you could first look at Exhibits 109 and 113.
Okay.
Are you able to tell who those were collected from, what person they were collected from?
Yes, on the outside envelopes as they were submitted, they have both have victim McQuinn.
And if I could have those, I will take them too, Ms. Huntsman. Can you point out to us on this exhibit what it is that you were able to observe that allowed you to make a comparison to the rifle?
Why don't you use the microphone, please? Yeah.
There should be a handheld one there.
Thank you.
Okay, this is pretty much an almost intact bullet. You can see some of the green tip up here at the top. We mark all of our items so we know where they came from to maintain the chain of custody. And right here you can see some of the land impressions that are cut into the surface of the bullet. Those are the areas where I'm going to look for the individual characteristics that I know that the rifle generates based on the exemplars, the test fires that I did. Those are my samples that went through the barrel. I test fired them, so I know that they were fired by the M&P rifle. And what I'm looking for are the individual scratches. Under the Elmo, we're unable to see that. Again, I use about 15 power. So in here I could see minute scratches and little details. And the whole idea with the test-fired bullets from the Smith & Wesson as well as the evidence bullets, there's 5 lands and grooves and there's a right direction to twist. So if I put the pointer there, you can see they're leaning or pointing to the right direction. So the general characteristics all lined up, and then I would look at, under the microscope, each of these land impressions, and basically what I'm doing is I'm looking for areas of agreement, and probably on the other side of the bullet, I'll also put index marks so I know where a good starting point is, and that's what I'll do to every fired .223 bullet that I have, or a fragment that's consistent with having come from a .223. I'm going to look for these areas or these patterns of agreement, and I'll go around the circumference of the bullet to look for these areas, and that's how I make my determination to the best of my abilities and to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty to give it either an identity as having been fired in the Smith & Wesson rifle. I can be inconclusive because there's a lack of marks, typically due to damage because of the velocity that the bullets are traveling at. Sometimes there's not enough information left for me to draw an identification. And other times there are no parts of the bullet that actually touch the rifling. So basically from this area back, this is called the cannelure. That's where the case mouth generally crimps right below that. This is the part that actually touches the inside of the barrel. The cannelure and above generally does not, because it comes to a point. So this is the area of importance forensically that I look at under the microscope. So here you can see some of the land impressions that I would use for my identifications.
Thank you. If you could take a look at People's Exhibit 104, we don't need to put the other one up that I gave to you, Ms. Huntsman. At People's Exhibit 104, it was previously admitted.
Okay.
Are you, based on that exhibit, do you know who that was collected from?
Yes, this was from victim Gowie.
And if I could have that one, I'll give that to Ms. Huntsman. Now, this fragment looks quite different from the last one that we looked at. How were you able to determine to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that this was fired from the rifle?
Again, the important part of the bullet, the part that comes into contact with the barrel, is what we have here. It's the lower half, so the cantilevered section of the bullet would be up here and above. This is the base area down here. And This is just the bottom half of the bullet, basically, that was compressed, squeezed together, the top portion sheared off with the other components that are generally found on the inside of this M855 bullet. But this is the majority of the base that I would need for my comparison.
Thank you. You can take that down. If you could next look at Exhibits 122 and 123. And are you able to determine from the packaging who those were collected from?
Yes, both of these fragments are from victim Wingo.
If you could look at Exhibits 443, or look at Exhibit 443.
Don't seem to have 443.
Okay, then we'll come back to that one.
Oh, here, oh no, that's 433.
433 is what I meant to say.
Oh.
Did I say 443?
Okay, so I have 443 here, or 433.
433, okay. And does that envelope indicate who that is from?
Yes, this is from victim Blunk, I'm sorry. Blunk.
If I could have that one, please. Now, on this one, did you separate this into several different fragments, giving them slightly different numbers?
Yes, that's correct. They would get what we call a sub-item because they are two separate pieces.
And they look different.
Yes, they do.
What are we looking at here? What part of a bullet are these?
Okay, the one off to the left with the green tip, that's just the nose portion. You can see on the bottom of that, the cantilever part. That's typically what these bullets do when they impact soft tissue, is they shear. They enter the victim. They basically yaw or turn. So if the microphone was heading in, after about 3 to 6 inches of travel in soft tissue, the bullets tend to deflect either up or down at high velocity. They will get squished sideways because of the velocity against the material it's traveling through.
Judge, I'm going to object as to relevance at this point.
Overruled.
You can continue.
Okay, and then because the cantilever section of the bullet is actually around the circumference of the bullet, that's where it first tends to fracture. So that's what we see here, the top half on the left and the bottom half of the bullet that I would use for my identification is also on the right-hand side. Sometimes we do get land impressions up around the cantilever, and on some of those particular bullets, I was able to also identify them back to the Smith & Wesson rifle with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
You can take that down, thank you. Would you look at Exhibit 440?
Okay,
Who is that bullet fragment from?
this is from victim Moser Sullivan.
If I could have that one, please. believe the court needs to do something, Your Honor. What are we looking at with this fragment?
This is a fully intact bullet. It has, again, been flattened because, again, it most likely went in to the victim, yawed, meaning turned sideways, and was forced and basically flattened out. So these start out as round cylindrical objects, and because of the velocity and the impact, they flatten out. This one didn't have a chance to come apart or fragment as some of the others did, but that's just what this particular bullet did. But you can see it's very flattened at the base. But again, it's an intact bullet, so it's very usable for my comparisons.
Would you take a look at Exhibit 448, and we can take this one down. Can you tell who this was taken from?
This is from victim medic.
And if I could have that one. What were you able to see in this particular fragment?
This is most of the base part of the standard M855 bullets that were used. The top half is sheared off, probably the part that has the penetrator in it. And you can see the base of it is somewhat flattened, so it's no longer round in profile. So again, it has the typical damage that is normally seen with these types of bullets when they impact soft tissue and yaw, and this one fragmented.
What does it mean when a bullet fragments?
That means its structural integrity wasn't able to hold up. Unlike the other bullet, this bullet with probably very close to the same velocity, this one maybe just impacted different objects in this particular victim.
Judge, I'm going to object to this being beyond the scope of this witness's testimony.
Sustained. I think he answered the question. I think that the question was, what do you mean by a fragment, a bullet fragment? What does that mean? And I think he's explained what it means.
You can take that down. Is there a difference in how a .223 round fragments versus a .40 caliber bullet?
Yes, and it would be a function of the velocity. Again, the .223 bullets traveling at over 3,000 feet per second. There's a lot more dynamics, a lot more energy going on there. So once the bullet yaws and turns and has the ability to, again, it's still high velocity,
I'm
come
going to
apart.
object. This has been asked and answered and gone over, and it's beyond the scope of this witness's expertise.
Sustained.
Would you look at Exhibit 311?
And just to be clear, I sustained it on asked and answered grounds. So under Rule 611A.
Can you tell on Exhibit 311 who this was taken from?
Christina Black,
Or Blache?
B-L-A-C-H-E.
And would you look at Exhibit 326?
Okay.
Can you tell who that was collected from?
This is Denise Trainom.
Thank you. Now, did you also look at fragments that you were not able to either eliminate or identify to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as having been fired from the rifle?
Yes, there were quite a few.
And were there ones that you found that had some characteristics in common with having been fired by the rifle?
Yes, just based on their structure, they appeared to be consistent with the same type of ammunition that was being fired.
I can have those back. I'm going to give you some additional exhibits.
Okay. Those, or do you want all of these?
I'll take all of these. Yeah, out of your way. I've handed you what have been previously admitted as People's Exhibits 103, 112, 121, 126, 127, 128, 310, 608, 609, 615, 625, 295, 640, and 643. Are these items that you examined as part of your firearms and ballistic examination?
Yes, they are.
And are these items that you were able to determine to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty had the same general rifling characteristics as the rifle but could not be identified or eliminated?
There's quite a few of these look like they're the nose or the tips of these bullets that may have some of the rifling characteristics present because they go down towards the cantilever part.
What does it mean when you find something that has the same general rifling characteristics, but that you can neither include or eliminate as having been fired by the rifle?
Just based on the lack of individual characteristics. Because they have the same general characteristics, there would be an inconclusive examination, but the lack of individual characteristics preclude me from identifying them because, again, there's the individual marks are generally found towards the base of the projectiles or even along the land impressions, but some of these did not have sufficient parts of the lands left behind because they're fragments of an intact bullet. So that would not allow me to observe enough information or individual characteristics to make an identification.
But is it, you were not able to find something sufficient to say that these were not fired from the rifle?
That's correct.
If you could first look at 103.
Okay.
And does that fragment indicate who it was taken from?
Yes, this is from victim Gowie.
If you could look at 112. Who is that one from?
Victim McQuinn.
And Exhibit 121.
Okay. That indicates victim Wingo.
And if you could look at 126, 127, and 128.
Okay, I see on 126 and 127, it has victim Tees. 128, I'm having a little trouble locating.
Okay. If I could, I'm going to retrieve 126 and 127 from you.
Okay.
Perhaps we can put both of these up sort of side by side. I don't know. Maybe not. We'll do them one at a time. Which one is this? 126? What are we looking at in this one, and what made it possible for you to neither identify it or eliminate it?
Okay, that's the nose portion of a 223 bullet. Let's see the nose portion here with some damage. Usually that's a close point. The top part here is actually heading towards the base of the bullet, and parts of this area would have some of the land impression from the rifle, but because it's so damaged, just able to tell the measurements were consistent on the land impressions that might be present, but again, not enough for an identification or to eliminate it.
Could you put up 127, please? What were you able to determine about this fragment?
Same with this fragment. It appears to me to be part of the side of the jacket, and again, not having enough information and a lot of damage due to the fragmentation of the bullet. I was unable to make a positive identification or elimination.
Thank you. If you would look at People's Exhibit 310. Does that indicate who that was from?
Victim Hankins.
And Exhibit 295?
Uh, 295 indicates Alejandra Cardona Lamas.
Thank you. Now, did you also examine fragments that you determined had no comparison value?
Yes, quite a few also.
What do you mean by having no comparison value?
Meaning that they didn't have any rifling characteristics present for me to compare to any of the test-fired bullets from the rifle. So they would appear to be maybe copper jacket fragments, lead fragments that had no viable information from the barrel that fired it. So therefore they get the no comparison value.
Was there anything you could tell about some of those fragments that there was anything about them that was consistent with the kind of ammunition that you examined in this case?
Yes, some of them did have some physical characteristics that would at least point me to being part of an M855 223 bullet.
Let's see, I'll take those back from you. I'm going to bring you some additional exhibits to look at. Are those all exhibits that you examined?
Yes, they all appear to be. I'll have my initials and stickers on them.
Are these fragments that are consistent with steel penetrators?
Quite a few of them. Looks like the first maybe 6 or 7.
And when we talk about something being consistent with a steel penetrator, what does that mean?
That just means it has the shape and configuration and the characteristics of one being steel and the conical shape where it would go into the nose of these bullets, and they were just noted as such.
And I've handed you exhibits 441, 447, 105, 106, 130, 627, 296, I believe. If you could look at exhibit 441 first, please. Can you tell who that was collected from?
Okay, I'll have to search out 441. I have 447.
Okay, and who was 447 collected from?
Victim medic.
You could look at 105 and 106.
Okay.
And who are those collected from?
Both of these indicate victim Gowie.
130,
Victim Teves.
and I'm going to take a couple of those and put them on the Elmo. What is this that we're looking at?
That is the steel penetrator tip that's inside the copper jacket of an M855 round, the type of rounds, the green tip rounds that were used in this case.
When you talk about a copper jacket, what do you mean?
The copper jacket is the nose portion that's envelops this steel penetrator. Inside the copper jacket is the steel penetrator and then the lead at the base that makes up the three major components of this particular round. So the copper jacket is the part that touches the inside of the barrel. That's this material I would use to make my comparisons to the test-fired rounds from this rifle. The other portions of the bullet don't touch the inside of the barrel, but in this particular case, they're very indicative of that particular round, that green tip round being used because of the steel penetrators that were found.
If you could put up the other two, and maybe you can put them on together. Or maybe not. Maybe that doesn't work. Unlike some of the other fragments that we've seen, the steel penetrators seem to look consistent to one another.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You can take that down. Did you also find fragments that had no comparison value but were consistent with copper bullet nose tips that are found in the .223 Remington ammunition?
Yes, there were a few of those also.
I may have handed this.
Yes, you did. I have one up here.
Okay. If you could, do you have Exhibit 449 there?
Yes, I do.
Does that indicate which victim that came from?
Yes, it's victim medic.
If I could have that one, please.
Okay.
Sorry. What are we looking at here?
That's the copper jacket nose portion of one of the 223 bullets that were fired in this event.
So that's consistent with the kind of ammunition used?
Yes, ma'am.
And would it be accurate to say that the tip of the bullet itself never touches the inside of the barrel such that any marks can be left on it.
Right, where this one fragmented, it was up high enough to where it's starting to narrow down and doesn't touch any of the lands on the inside of the barrel.
Now, did you also look at BB shot?
Yes, it did.
Are these items that you also examined in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to tell with BB shot which kind of, which gun it's fired from?
Well, there's no identifiable marks to the barrel of any of the firearms, but this is consistent with the load of the shot shells that were fired, that were identified as having been fired in the Remington 870. These are steel BB-sized pieces of shot.
If you could look at Exhibit 437, please.
Okay, I have 437.
Does that indicate who that was taken from?
Yes, it indicates victim Childress.
And Exhibit 96?
Don't have 96.
I did not give you 96?
No, ma'am.
Okay. If you would look at 116, if you have that one.
Okay, yes, I do have 116.
And who was that collected from?
Victim Wingo.
Now, were you also able to look at some projectiles and make a determination to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that some .40 caliber projectiles were in fact fired from one of the handguns collected in this case?
Yes, I was.
You could particularly look at Exhibits 595 and 621.
Okay.
And are these items that you examined in the course of your examination of all of the evidence in this case?
Yes, they are.
Were you able to determine to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that Exhibits 595 and 621 were fired from one of the pistols recovered in this case?
Yes, I was. Based on my microscopic comparison of these two bullets to the test-fired bullets that I generated from the Glock 22 pistol, I was able to make the determination to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that these two bullets were fired from the Glock 22 pistol that was recovered at the theater.
And the Glock 22 pistol, was that the one that also had a sight on it?
Yes, it had the laser sight under it.
If I could have those to put under the elbow. I'll take this one. If you could explain to us what we're looking at here.
Okay. Right here, this is the bottom portion of the bullet. This area here is the side of the bullet and the nose, and what it has done, it is mushroomed. It starts out at this diameter, 0.40 inches. Whatever material this hit caused it to mushroom and impact and basically expand to almost twice the diameter. The base area here is the area that I would look at and make my comparisons versus the test-fired bullets that I generated from the Glock 22 as well as the Glock 23. And even though the bullet looks very damaged, the area is very usable, especially at about 15 power under my microscope. I'm able to look at and find, or was able to find sufficient individual characteristics that, again, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, I was able to identify this as having been fired by the Glock 22 pistol.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions for you.
Cross-examination, Mr. King.
Good morning, sir.
I don't have a lot of questions for you. Just so that we're clear, the general rifling characteristics that you're talking about, the 870 shotgun doesn't have any rifling characteristics inside the barrel, does it? That's a smooth bore barrel, correct?
Right, that is correct.
Both of the Glock pistols and the Smith & Wesson rifle that have been admitted in this case have the same general rifling characteristics in that they have 5 lands and grooves each and a right-hand twist. Is that right?
No, the Glocks are 6-sided. So there's 6 areas of damage that are done to the bullets fired from a Glock. And there are different configuration because they are the bullets are squeezed into this hexagonal profiled barrel. There's 6 edges that are squished onto the surface of the bullet. I'm sorry, that's about as demonstrative as I can get. Whereas on the Smith & Wesson, there's 5 actual cuts into that cause visual damage to the surface of the bullets on that aspect. So there's a difference.
I thank you for correcting me on that. And I'm not suggesting that you, for that reason, wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the .40 caliber bullets and the rifle bullets. There's certainly a lot of other ways to do that, fair to say.
Yes, there are.
The size of them and the shape of them. And
That is correct, yes.
the point is that these general rifling characteristics that are left on these bullets are left both in the pistols and the rifle as opposed to the shotgun, was my point.
Yes, that's correct.
And the purpose, generally speaking, is to create a spiral pattern on the inside of the barrel, which will then spin the bullet, facilitating accuracy, essentially.
Right, and they're mandated on rifles and handguns to, by the BATFE, to put rifling inside of their barrels.
Kind of like the same principle as like throwing a spiral with a football, like Tom Brady throwing a deflated football, right?
Correct. It's going to fly more accurately in that aspect, but also it can leave individual marks, so it can be traced possibly back to that particular firearm.
And I just have a few questions about the firearms. The demonstrative that you brought in, which was a Colt
Yes.
Rifle, is identical in function, essentially, to the Smith & Wesson rifle. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
And I noted when you had your demonstrative out that the barrel is considerably shorter considerably, maybe 2 or 3 inches shorter. Is that like a 14-inch barrel?
Yes, it's a 14.5-inch barrel.
And the difference is that that's a law enforcement rifle, and law enforcement are allowed to have 14-inch barrels. That wouldn't be legal for a civilian to have a rifle like that. Is that right?
You can buy them. You have to go through your sheriff and get the stamps and pay the proper fees. It's what's considered a short-barreled rifle. We get it mostly for its compactness, so it will be more suitable for what our field agents use them for, whereas, a 16-inch barrel or 20-inch barrel for the normal population, a little less portable, but again, you'll get more velocity. So there's a little trade-off with both.
Right, and absent having some special permitting and stuff like that, if you were to just go into a store and purchase a rifle like this, you couldn't buy one that was that short. You'd have to buy one with a longer barrel, like this rifle.
Correct, the 16-inch barrel. You demonstrated the shotgun as being a manual reloading system, and both of the Glock pistols and the Smith & Wesson rifle are semi-automatic weapons. Is that correct? That is correct.
And that is distinguishable, and this is probably obvious to this jury, but I just want to be clear. These are not what you would call a machine gun or a fully automatic weapon where it just keeps firing until there are no more bullets. In these weapons, you have to individually pull the trigger for each separate bullet, correct?
Yes, for the semi-automatics, you would have to pull the trigger for each shot that's being fired, and for the shotgun, not only pull and release the trigger, you'd also have to work the pump. So that one has a little extra step.
Now, you've talked some about the shotgun shot that was used, namely the bird shot. There were also, and you testified about this yesterday, 6 shotgun shells that contained double-aught buckshot. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And the distinction, and I think you testified about this yesterday, is that these are, there are fewer pellets, but they're considerably larger in size. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
And traditionally, for hunting, bird shot is for hunting birds, and buckshot is for hunting deer, right?
Right. I don't know, I'm having trouble with the bird shot and the BB size. BB's actually rather large, so it's kind of like on the spectrum heading towards like the buckshot range. So it's for larger game or geese, that kind of sort of thing, where you need the projectiles to retain their energy.
Sure. And suffice it to say, they're all different size of shot.
Yes, it spans the gamut from very small to the double-aught, triple-aught buck size.
And none of the 6 rounds of double-aught buck that you were fired, is that right? They were all unspent rounds?
Right, they were unspent. They were live.
And you have no indication, based upon the evidence you received, that there were any buckshot rounds that were fired in the theater, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you talked about 3 different, first of all, both of the Glock pistols and the Smith & Wesson rifle, they lock with the bolt open when the magazine is empty, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So what that means is that it's fairly simple to reload them. You just need to insert a new magazine and press the bolt release, or like you indicated, pull back on the manual arming, what's the word?
The charging handle.
Charging handle, in order to reload the weapon, is that right?
Yes, if you were able to shoot the 3 semi-automatic firearms, 2 where the magazines were empty, they would lock back and facilitates reloading. If you haven't practiced that very often, the bolt's wide open, insert a new magazine and close the bolt, whether you slingshot the charging handle or hit the bolt release, or do the same thing with the pistols. That will get fresh ammunition back into the firearms.
And in this circumstance, there were three different, your items, 72, 82, and 85, which were People's Exhibits 573, and 576, that had some damage to them. Do you remember those bullets? And those were bullets that were not fired.
That is correct. They were still live.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Were you done?
Yes, I was.
Those were bullets that in your report you wrote had been worked through the action of that rifle, correct?
No, those three I indicated had evidence of some sort of feeding malfunction.
And what that meant was that it had they had a flattened portion on the top of the bullet, or one of the sides of the bullet. Is that something?
Right, they were either flattened, they had a dent in them, or one that had a dent as well as the bullet pushed way back in.
And that would be consistent with feeding malfunction, in your opinion, based upon your experience as an armorer?
Yes, that's correct.
Normally, those bullets would feed from the magazine in a linear fashion, perpendicular to the ground, essentially, until the elevator moves them up into an area where the bolt can catch them and push them into the firing chamber, right?
Right, well, the elevator's on the shotgun, but they after they leave the magazine, they're pretty much just a little bit above horizontal, and it's a very direct straight shot above the feed ramps on the M&P rifle that would help it just go directly in.
And I think what you testified to yesterday is that would cause a jam of the weapon.
Yes, it would normally cause a jam.
Now, based upon the fact that there are three of those, you would conclude, based upon your experience, that there were more than one jam of that weapon, correct?
More than one jam or more than one attempt to cycle the bad ammunition out and get the M&P rifle back up and running again.
So there would have to be either 2 or 3 jams or attempts.
Attempts, yes, sir.
Now, a misfeeding like that can occur due to having overloaded your magazines, essentially. I think you testified yesterday that law enforcement, you load 28 rounds into those 30-round magazines.
Right, we try and download them because if you try and insert those magazines on a closed bolt rifle, normally we don't shoot our rifles to slide lock or where the bolt is locked back, so we don't know if we fired 15 or 25. So we're going to possibly reinsert a fresh magazine with the bolt closed so we don't have to go through all those manipulations. So some of these feeding problems could indicate either the bad magazines or just other attempts at trying to get fresh rounds into that gun.
In your item 245, which was identified as People's Exhibit 270, that was a magazine, a 30-round magazine that was found that had 30 rounds in it. Is that correct?
Almost there.
Your 245?
Sorry, I have a few pages of notes here. Oops. There we go. That one's a long travel for that? Yes, that is correct.
And your item 224, which was also a rifle magazine that was located and you processed, was a rifle magazine that had 31 rounds in it. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
And in your report, you note that when loaded with the 31 rounds of ammunition, it will not properly lock into the rifle when the bolt of the rifle is forward,
That
correct?
is correct, yes.
Won't function correctly.
No, sir.
Your item number 226, which is a magazine that you processed, also trying to find the people's exhibit number here. There are so many numbers.
I know.
It would be People's Exhibit number 693. That's a magazine also that you had that also was located with 31 rounds in it. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
And your notation in your report is the same with regard to that, loaded with the 31 rounds that it won't lock into the bolt of the rifle and function properly, correct?
That is correct.
You testified on direct examination yesterday that the 40-round magazines that you examined, most of them had damage to the lip area of the magazines. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you said you didn't know that damage could be caused by a number of different things, fair to say?
Fair to say, yes, sir.
Dropping it on the ground, trying to jam it into the rifle when it wouldn't go in.
I would probably go with the first one more because the well is opened and the area of damage would kind of be in the open area for the magazine well.
And you don't, I'm sorry.
Oh, just saying that it most likely occurred from hitting the ground.
And you don't know whether that occurred hitting the ground in the theater or whether they were brought to the theater in that condition or not, do you?
That is entirely true.
And those are the type of things as an armorer that you have to keep your eye on with your equipment, right?
Yes, and when damaged stuff comes to me, I really don't have a question about how or when it happened, just to get it out of circulation and replace it or repair it.
Item number 246, which is a magazine, People's Exhibits 263 and 264, was also a rifle magazine loaded with 31 rounds of ammunition. Is that right?
Yes, in my report, my item 246 is described as a rifle mag with 31 rounds, but I just have 31 rounds of ammunition.
Same condition as the other two magazines that were overloaded with 31 rounds. Is that right?
Yeah, if those were removed from a standard 30-round magazine, then that would be overloaded.
And item number, the magazine, and you showed this via the document projector to the jury. Your item number 228, which is People's Exhibit 260 and 261, as admitted, was the one that was very damaged on the lip portion of them. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
The ammunition that this green-tipped ammunition that you described, this is a type of ammunition that you can go online and buy or go to a store and buy. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
You talked some about the drum magazine. The drum magazine, I think you said was, well, first of all, it's not the best kind of drum magazine that there is, fair to say?
Well, it's patterned after a device called the Beta Mag, which is probably, I think it's about twice as much as what this knockoff magazine is. Even those, from the internet, appear to have problems. Again, because it's so much stuff going on in there to make work with reliability. So on the surface, it sounds really neat to have 100 rounds available, but at what cost? The normal 30-round mags are about $7 or $8, and they function until the magazine springs wear out, and you can fix those up again and put new magazine springs and have a new, perfectly good magazine. Whereas these other ones, they come with a graphite lube to keep the bullets from sticking to each other, to keep them from malfunctioning. It's just a lot of work to not have to reload.
And you all don't use those at the CBI, do you?
No, sir.
There appears to be on the rifle what looks like a scope of some kind. Is that a scope like you would use hunting that would magnify things or not?
No, it's what we call a red dot sight, so it basically just projects a red dot in your field of view, and if sighted in properly, they're very effective for quick acquisition of targets and shooting.
And you brought up a good point there. When sighted accurately, in order for that to work properly, you have to zero that sight. Is that right? So
That
you
is
have to
correct, yes.
make sure that it's lined up properly and zeroed with the target accurately. Fair to say?
Correct.
And if it's not, it's not going to be much help.
Right, your red dot may be somewhere else.
There was another on the pistol, on the Glock 22 that you testified fired some of those rounds. There's a laser sight on that as well. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And this is the kind of laser it's attached to the slide of the pistol. Is that right?
Actually, to the frame, so it's kind of follows where the muzzle is going.
And it projects out a laser beam. Is that right?
That's correct.
That kind of a sight has to be zeroed in for accuracy too. Isn't that right?
That's correct, yes.
And now you don't use, on your Glocks at the CBI, you don't use a laser like that, do you?
No, we don't.
And it can cause problems, can it not, with the weapon?
Yes, there are some reports that the lasers or anything attached to some of the rails, especially on the Glock 22s, can bind the frame and cause it to malfunction.
Thank you. If I can have a moment, Your Honor.
You may.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Agent.
Thank you.
Ms. Pearson, do you have any redirect?
One, Agent Higashi, you used the acronym BATFE.
Correct.
What do you mean by that?
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
And is that the agency that would determine the characteristics or what rifles and shotguns and handguns need to be able to do to be sold to the public?
Yes, they are. They're the ones that make all the rules.
No more questions.
Any recross? The jury may have questions for you, Agent Higashi. It looks like they do.
Okay, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you. Would counsel please approach? All right, Agent Higashi, there are some questions that the jury has submitted that I have found, based on the rules of evidence and other applicable rules of law, are appropriate. The first question is, approximately how much does the loaded shotgun weigh, the loaded rifle, and the loaded Glock, if you know?
Okay. I would say we'll go backwards, the loaded Glock, maybe a pound and a half to 2 pounds, fully loaded. The rifle's probably around 7 to 8 pounds, and the shotgun would be maybe 5 pounds.
The next question is, how many pellets did you say were in the red shotgun shells?
In the red shotgun shells, those are what we call low recoil double-aught buck loads. So typically what they do is they remove one of the pellets, so there would be 8 total pellets, whereas a standard double-aught buck load would hold 9 pellets.
The next question is, what size is bird shot? And then in parentheses it says hunting load, end parenthesis or close parenthesis, as compared to the BB shot or 00 shot.
Okay. Typically what I think of for bird shot would be something that you would use for sporting clays or target shooting, and that would be a size 7.5 size shot. So that's about 1/10 of an inch, 0.10. Shotgun nomenclature goes backwards, so it's a little hard to visualize at first, but it's the BB size shot is 0.177 in diameter. So the larger the number, the smaller the size shot. So 7.5 size shot, you start looking at 1/10 of an inch. 9 size shot would be like 0.08 inches in diameter. 11 size shot, which is really fine bird shot, would be like 0.06 inches in diameter. And then you go the other way when you start getting into the buckshot loads. We have double-aught buck, which is the most prevalent one, where you get the pellets are like 0.32 inches. I think there's the triple-aught buck, which is, I think, 0.35 inches. And we have 0 buck, we have number 1 buck, number 4 buck, and those would all vary in sizes, going smaller in diameter. So there's a whole myriad of types of loads that the 12 gauge can fire.
Any follow-up questions, Ms. Pearson?
Your Honor.
Any follow-up questions, Mr. King?
No, thank you.
May this witness be released from his subpoena?
He may.
Any objection?
Without objection.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Agent Higashi, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please call your next witness.
We'll call Christopher Moore.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Could I have you raise your right hand for me so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated.
Thank you.
Could you please tell us your full name for the record and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Yes. Christopher Lee Moore.
And can you spell your first, middle, and last names?
Yes. CHRISTOPHER. Lee, Lee, and Moore, More.
Mr. Edson, you may proceed.
Thank you. Sir, I'm going to direct your attention to July of 2012, and specifically July 3rd of 2012. How were you employed back on July 3rd, 2012?
I worked for FedEx office off 13700 East Colfax Avenue in Aurora.
Sorry, is that in Aurora?
Yes, it's a major cross-section to be Colfax and 225.
What was your duties at the FedEx office during that time period?
I dealt with customer service, office printing, and shipping.
What is FedEx Office?
It's a center that you can go to have office things to get printed, or if you want to ship something or have something held, you could do that all in one location.
Can customers have items delivered instead of to their house to that FedEx office via FedEx?
Yes, we have the opportunity to hold at a location. Our center had that opportunity, so if you were to order something online, you can have it sent to our center, and it'll be held for about 5 business days.
What is the process for someone to come in and pick up the items that they have requested shipped and be held there?
So if the package had already been to our location, they'll receive a phone call that they have a package held, how long it's going to be held before it gets sent back. By then, the customer would have to come in, show a photo ID or a tracking number, and then we'll have them sign a release form, and then just release it out to them.
That process that you just described, was that part of your duties back in July of 2012?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention to July 20th of 2012. Were you also employed by FedEx office back on that date?
Yes.
Were you contacted by law enforcement in relation to the shooting that had happened at the Century 16 Theater?
Yes.
I don't want you to get into any sort of conversations or statements, but did you ultimately talk to law enforcement about a customer by the name of James Holmes?
Yes.
At some point in the days after July 20th, 2012, did you have an opportunity to view a video surveillance from the FedEx office from July 3rd, 2012?
No.
At some point before your testimony today, have you had an opportunity to view a video surveillance of FedEx office from July 3rd, 2012?
Yes.
Did you see yourself in that video surveillance?
Yes.
Did you also see individual related to the purchase picked up by James Holmes?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
You may.
I've shown counsel and have also placed before you, sir, People's Exhibit 1021. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
It has my signature and the date.
Okay. Is that a copy of the video surveillance from July 3rd, 2012?
Yes.
Is that a copy that you previously have watched yourself?
Yes.
When did you watch that particular copy?
June 5th, it says 2015.
Were you able to see yourself in that video?
Yes.
Were you able to see yourself assisting a customer on July 3rd, 2012?
Yes,
Do you actually remember that transaction?
I do.
Does that particular video surveillance fairly and accurately depict the customer pickup of some items from July 3rd, 2012?
Yes.
Do I have a move for admission of People's Exhibit 1021?
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, People's Exhibit P-TR-1021 is admitted and may be published.
Sir, a couple of questions before we publish the surveillance video. What do you recall about this particular transaction from July 3rd, 2012?
So the customer came into the center and approached the service desk and said that he had some packages to pick up. The gentleman had short sleeve shirt, shorts on, a kind of reddish orange long hair, and he wore a beanie. I remember he had sunglasses.
I'm
as
sorry,
well.
can you pull the microphone down a little bit, please, so we can all hear you? Can you repeat the last part?
Yes. So the customer came into the front service desk, and he said that he had some packages to pick up. What he was wearing, he had short sleeve shirt on, shorts, long reddish orange hair. He wore a beanie and sunglasses. Went to. We have a cage where the packages are held in, but if the cage is too full, we have a safety zone where you put packages as well. So went to go pick up the packages. sat him on the desk, got his tracking number, scanned out the packages, had him sign the release form, and that was pretty much it.
Do you remember anything about the packages?
They're very heavy, and they made like a rattling noise as if like metal was rattling together.
Do you remember how many packages?
There were 6.
Did you help the customer transport the packages out of the store?
No,
How did the packages get out of the store?
he brought them out himself.
Judge, at this time, I would request publication of 1021. I'll tell the court it's 5 minutes long with no sound.
All right. The request is granted.
May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may. Do you want me to dim the lights, Mr. Edson?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sir, just a couple more quick questions. I should have asked you this before, but were you the individual in the black or gray shirt with the black pants?
Yes.
It appeared that you were scanning some of the boxes. What are you doing there?
Releasing the packages out of our system.
To the best of your recollection and viewing of this video, were all the packages that were ordered and were held there, were they all picked up?
Yes.
Judge, can I have one moment, please?
Yes.
I have nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
All right, is there any cross-examination, Ms. Brady?
No, sir. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. The jury may have a question for you, sir. Give us a moment, please. Would counsel please approach? Sir, the jury has submitted a question that, based on the rules of evidence and other applicable rules of law, I have determined it's appropriate. The question is, when you spoke with the defendant during the transaction, can you comment on his demeanor at the time? Did he seem calm, anxious, or neither?
Calm but very quiet.
Any follow-up questions based on that question and that answer, Mr. Edson?
No, thank you, Judge.
Any follow-up questions from you, Ms. Brady?
Just briefly, and sir, your interaction with him was very short. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
May this witness be released from his subpoena?
You may, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any objection?
No objection. Thank you.
All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the jury, it's 10:15, so let's go ahead and take our morning break. Please keep in mind that my advisements related to your conduct apply during the break, and then we'll see you back here in 20 minutes, okay? Enjoy the break. Thank you. The record should reflect the jury has exited the courtroom. Please be seated, everyone. Is there anything we need to talk about at this time on behalf of the people? Mr. Orman?
Your Honor, I just handed to counsel a future exhibit. We're going to seek to admit 1088. And I don't expect council to have any objections at this time, but I expect they might based on previous objections they've made. These are jail kites or messages that the defendant sent to jail personnel requesting things and so forth. And because I anticipate a potential objection from the defendant, I wanted to give that to them so they have time to formulate that. But I also thought it would be appropriate to provide the court a copy so that we can discuss that before we attempt to admit it. I don't see that happening today, and frankly, I don't see that happening tomorrow. It's most likely next week, but I just wanted to follow that same procedure.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you doing that. Why don't we wait before you give it to me until they've had a chance to review it? If they say they have no objection, then I don't need to review it. If they have an objection, then I will review it with the objections in mind.
Thank you, Your Honor. I understand.
All right, in terms of Exhibit P-TR-1227, which we talked about yesterday, and I ruled on yesterday, I had offered the defense an opportunity to have a few things redacted from it. Have the parties conferred about that?
I did confer with counsel. She indicated that she would like those redactions, and then I went over the specific redactions with her to make sure that we agreed on what they should be.
All right, is that correct, Ms. Spengler?
That is correct.
Okay, great. And so, Ms. Spengler, you have chosen to have the redactions made, and it sounds like the people have made the redactions. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, we'll be on break. I'll see you back here in about 20. The court will be in recess.